Good morning. I was tempted when I realised it was a psalm. Perhaps I should dig out my Church of Scotland Psalter and sing it to you, but then I thought, yeah, maybe not. So today's scripture reading is from the Old Testament, from the book of Psalms. Psalm number 8, a psalm of David. And we're reading from the Message translation. Listen for the word of God. God, brilliant Lord, yours is a household name. Nursing infants gurgle choruses about you. Toddlers shout out songs that drown out enemy talk and silence atheist babble. I look up at your macro skies, dark and enormous, your handmade sky jewelry, moon and stars mounted in their settings. Then I look at my micro self and wonder, why do you bother with me? Why do you bother with us? Why take a second look our way? Yet we've so narrowly missed being gods, bright with Eden's dawn light. You put us in charge of your handcrafted world. Repeated to us your Genesis charge, made us stewards of sheep and cattle, even animals out in the wild, birds flying and fish swimming, whales singing in the ocean deeps. God, brilliant God, your name echoes around the world. Thanks be to God for the reading of this, his holy word, world without end. Amen.
Thank you, sir. God be with you.
And also with you, Nick.
So I have a new, that's not true. I reread books. Because we all have books that we go to again and again, right? I don't know why I'm calling it a new book. But I have a book that I'm rereading. It's a book that lives on my shelf, and it's called Sick in the Head by Judd Apatow. If you don't know, he's a writer, he's a director, he's a comedian. If you've seen any comedies in the past 15 years, he's had his hands in them. And it's a great book, because it's a book full of him interviewing other comedians. And I got the book because, well, not just because I love comedy, and I got the book not just because I think there's a pretty big parallel between preaching and stand-up. It's true, because, think about it. You can't do either in front of an empty room. Both necessitate some sort of energetic audience exchange. And both have this really, fundamental prophetic edge to them, where both at their best and at their healthiest are about speaking truth, about expanding consciousness, about bringing people into joy. And both stand-up and preaching try to do that in their own ways. But I also picked it up because one of the things I love doing the most is I love learning about people's creative processes. I love listening to people talk about their craft and how they do what they do. And this book is just full of any comedian you could possibly think of who has a reputation talking about how they do what they do, why they do what they do, and how they got from here to here. And there's one interview in here, I don't remember who it is, it does not matter. But Judd's asking them, what made you good? Is it the tens of thousands of hours that you put into it? Is that what got you good? Because that's how we talk about getting good, right? It's by doing. And the person replies, sure, it was certainly all the doing, but what got me good was failing and bombing again and again and again. It was completely falling down flat on my face. And I love it when people that we consider experts talk about failing, because it lets us know this really counterintuitive truth that is certainly, as people of faith, we can all get down on, because resurrection and grace kind of shape how we view the world. Because out there we're taught that failure is bad and wrong and something to avoid. But everyone reaches this point in their life where they kind of realize that the opposite is true, that failure is actually your friend, that falling down flat on your face is the only way we really learn and grow. And Jesus certainly taught that. And our faith certainly embraces this truth. And so I appreciate him saying that. But then he went on, and the person said this: "But the way I got good was less me failing and doing, and more the hours of watching everyone else who came before me." And I remember putting the book down and sitting with that one, because there's something really powerful in that statement. This is why I'm telling you all this. There's a spiritual concept that they're talking about. And it's this idea that we become what we behold. We become what we behold. Which can be, I know, pretty obvious if we think about it, but sometimes the simple stuff is really the essential stuff. So let's just talk about it and name it. We become what we behold. Think of the media that you watch. You watch the media and it's all heavy, bad, terrible, divisive news. And what happens to you? We start to react to it, right? We get a bit more paranoid. We get a bit more on edge. We get a bit more depressed, right? Yeah, we become what we behold. Or think about our phones and scrolling away, and our phones tell us that it's all about looking a certain way and being a certain way and attaining certain things. And what happens to us? We start to change, and we start being oriented towards gaining those things and being a certain way and doing certain things because we think that brings us happiness. Or think about the family systems that we grew up in. As kids, we witness and we observe and we take in. It all goes to work in us. And then we all hit that point where we realize, oh my God, I've become my mom. Right? Which is rarely like a celebratory thing. But the truth underneath it is we become what we behold. We take in things. And we can even look at this through our climate. Because we know the hotter the environment, the hotter we get, the angrier we get. We know there's a direct correlation between heat and anger. And so really, is it any wonder that as our climate gets hotter and hotter and more undone, that society as a whole is becoming hotter and hotter and more undone? Yeah, we become what we behold. This is part of what it means to be spiritual. That what we attend to, that what we give our attention to, that what we surround ourselves with actually shapes us. Because to be spiritual means to recognize that this universe is not passive, it's not static, but it's actually dynamic. It's all connected. To be spiritual is to be aware that both on the macro and the micro, we're all in a relationship that we can't get out of. And this is why people talk about how everything is one. And this is why Jesus says that we're all family, because he recognizes on some fundamental cellular level, we are all connected. We're all interdependent. We're all reliant on each other because that's just how things are. And this is true. And this is something that we talk a lot about here in church. This is why spiritual practices are so important. This is why we talk about self-awareness being so important, because we recognize that we become what we behold. And while that is certainly true and something that is important, whenever we have this conversation about what it means to actually be human, as Christians, we bring something actually really unique to this conversation. Because while we can all admit that, yes, we are a product of our environments, and yes, we are to some degree at the mercies of the energies around us, and yes, we are kind of vessels that can get filled up with stuff. What we bring to the table is we say, yeah, but we're not just blank canvases. We're not just these empty bags of flesh that get filled up with whatever is around us. What we bring to the conversation is we actually say there's something already baked into us. that can shape and transform who we are. And we call that the imago Dei, which is just Latin for the image of God, which is just a fancy way of talking about what the psalmist said in the Psalms. That to be human is to be like God. Or to put it another way, is to be reflective of or to resemble God. It's to say that we share the characteristics of God. It's to say that to be human is to have within us the very image and likeness of the divine. And we're going to pull over here because there's a lot we could get into. But for today, with everything going on in our world this week, and with everything that we're trying to do and be as a faith community, there are two things I want to offer you this morning about the image of God and what it means to us. And the first one is this. When the writers of the Bible in the book of Genesis say that all of humanity is made in the image of God, we're meant to take that literally. All actually means all. And let's just say that again for the people in the back, because this is something that we do a really good job at forgetting. All means all. Everyone is made in the image of God. Gay, made in the image of God. Immigrant, made in the image of God. Women, made in the image of God. Differently abled, made in the image of God. Neurodivergent, made in the image of God. People of color, made in the image of God. People you love to hate, say it with me, made in the image of God, right? You, me, us, we're made in the image of God. All literally means all. Despite what some churches might say, this is not something we get when you come to faith. This is not a prize that God doles out on a chosen few, but this is something that's baked into us just because we are human beings. And recognizing this is not nothing. This is actually a really huge deal, because as we enter into this world of scarcity and we fearmonger our resources, as we watch people get their basic needs barely met, as we witness an entire military being mobilized against people protesting, as more and more kids die in Gaza, as we talk about what it means to be an inclusive and diverse community of faith, this whole idea that all means all and all are made in God's image, it forces us to have a really important conversation and ask a really huge question. Well, if everyone is made in God's image, why are we treating them as less than that? Why are we allowing them to be treated as less than that? Why are we just standing by passively when that happens? How are we tolerating anyone else be treated as less than godlike? And we can take this conversation even further, and we can turn it around on ourselves. And we can ask this question of, who's ever shrugged off their humanity before? Who's ever gone, maybe you're out at nighttime and you're looking up at the stars, kind of like what the psalmist was saying, and you're like, who am I? Like, I am this insignificant, small speck of dust in the grand scheme of things. How can I possibly matter in the grand cosmic scheme? Or when I look at all the world's issues, I'm just one human being. I have no agency. I have no power. Who's ever thought that? Right? Yeah. Or let's ask this one. Who has ever seen their humanity as something as awful, shameful, wretched, and wicked? Yeah, churches have made a lot of money off of that one. And again, it's not for nothing, because our tradition here says the opposite. That to be human is not something that is insignificant and small or to be ashamed of, but to be human is actually a privilege and an honor, because to be human is to be made in God's image. Krista Tippett actually calls being human a calling, which I love. It's this beautiful way of talking about this honor and this privilege, that to be human is a calling, is to aspire to live out of the image that we have within us. Which leads us to one really huge question. Okay, what does that look like then? What does that mean? How do I reflect God? How do I resemble God? How do I live that out? And now there are all kinds of things we could say. All kinds of great answers to that. We could talk about how God is loving and kind and gracious and creative. And so we, in how we live and how we order the world, we are supposed to be loving, kind, creative, and just as well. Sure. Fine. But we can do better. Because whenever we have a conversation about what God is like, we'll get those answers from basically every spiritual tradition out there. And we can affirm that. We can say, yes, we are down with it. But as fans and followers of Jesus and people in this tradition, we'll bring one really weird, wacky, and unique idea to the table that we would say everything else flows out of this. And it's this idea that we call the Trinity. This idea that God is actually 3 in 1. That God is all at once. Father, Son, Spirit, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. And now, we could sit down together and try to figure that out and all get nosebleeds from trying to make it make sense. But here's what I'll tell you, and I don't know if this is something I'll get in trouble for saying. I think it's the opposite, but when it comes to trying to figure out how the Trinity works, here's my professional opinion on it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the math. This is something that we can shrug at and let be a mystery. We don't need to know. It does not matter. But what we do need to know, and what does matter, is what the Trinity is trying to tell us about God. Because the idea of the Trinity is not just saying that we can experience God in 3 different ways. It's not just saying that we can experience God as creator, we can experience God in Jesus, and we can experience now God as a spirit. And they're all different, yet they're all the same, and it has more to do with how we can relate to and experience God. Yes, all true. That's how the whole idea got started. But it's actually telling us something way bigger and deeper than that. And it tells us something that might take a while to sink in. You might sit uncomfortably with it and not really know what to do with it. Cool, good. Marinate in it. Because what the idea of the Trinity is trying to tell us is that if God is 3, then God is what? If God is 3, then God is relationship. If God is 3, then God is community. What the Trinity is trying to tell us is that we have a God whose very nature, whose very being is one of loving relationships. What the Trinity tells us is that we don't have a God who is above all dominating and controlling, but we have a God who is with, relating, and connecting. That's who God is. Richard Rohr would put it like this. Whatever is going on in God, and I love that phrase because it allows it to be a mystery. Whatever is going on in God is a flow, a radical relatedness, a perfect communion between 3, a dance of love. That's the kind of God that we have. Or to put it another way, when we talk about the Trinity, we're talking about a God who endlessly moves towards another. This God that is always other-centered, this God that is self-giving, this God that goes out of their way to bring everything together and bring it all in, connected, related, united, everyone in loving and just relationship. Yeah, that's the kind of God that we have. And that's what the Trinity is really about. It's about this God that is this endless cycle of love, this God that moves out to bring in, moves out to bring in, constantly pouring itself out to others so they can all be in loving relationship together. And so when it comes to us, when it comes to being human then, when we have the conversation about what does this mean for us, what does it tell us? Well, it's kind of obvious, but let's just name it, because again, the simple things are often the important things. It tells us when it comes to being human, it is not about aspiring to be above all, controlling and dominating and in charge. But when it comes to being human, it's about being with, relating, and connecting. It's about being in relationship and being in community. And that matters because it tells us that life, this life that you are all here trying to pursue, this life that you're all here trying to create, this life and world that Jesus wants us to have, it is only found through community and through relationships. It's done through that hard and courageous and messy work of moving towards others, of listening, understanding, being vulnerable, connecting, telling our stories, because that is where life is found. That is how we create that life in a world of peace, justice, hope, and mercy. It is only found through mutual, just, open relationships. And again, you know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Think of a time in your life when something got better because you shared it with someone. What happened inside of you? Think about a time in your life when someone told you their story, and then something started to move inside of you, and the air changed, your consciousness shifted, and the world got bigger. Think of a problem you were trying to solve on your own, and then you finally brought someone else in, and you were able to find a solution. This is what we talk about when we talk about being in relationship and that being divine. Because God is relationship. God is love. This is what it means to be human. Because this is what it means to be like God. People who strive to be in just, loving, mutual, open relationships that are founded on extravagant and indiscriminate love. And so as we think about the Trinity and we think about what it means to be human, we're left with a few questions. And you can take these with you and you can head out into the week. Who do you need to be in relationship with? Who is that person that you think of right now and you're like, nope. Don't want to talk to them. Don't want to be near them. Nope. And we're not talking about the abusive ones that need to stay over there. We're talking about the people where there's something between you. Or you don't know anyone like them. You don't have a person of color friend. You don't have a disabled friend, and you don't know what their experience is. And your world is small because of it. Who do you need to go and relate to? Who do you need to go and connect with? What part of you is exiled? What part of yourself do you need to connect with? Because what the truth of the Trinity tells us is that you'll only be whole, and we will only be whole when we are in relationship. And so this time is for you to recognize that is what it means to be human, and that we'll only get there when we are connected, sitting at a table together, understanding, learning, and connecting, because that is where God is found, and that is where it all happens. So as you strive for those connections, as you work to being human, may grace and peace be with you.